Who are you voting for in 2012? What issues matter to you, and who is going to lead the charge in making sure they're taken care of? Undecided demographics as of 2011 span all ages, genders, ethnicities, and not surprising, the majority of the millennial generation has no clue what candidate is going to best represent them.
Well, I haven't really heard too much about it. I haven't been up to date as much as I'd like to be, but I have heard some rumors.
My fellow college students, we are the millennials. We are the ones who are growing up in the era of globalization and the ones who, because of the economy, are unsure of the legacy we'll pass on to our children. We are the undecided ones, left with bad taste in our mouth after an administration about hope and change hasn't turned around our collision course.
I think that President Obama has done a good job, but I think that it will not hurt to have a challenger in the Democratic Party, but also from a Republican that will come at him.
I definitely don't support Barack Obama in being the next president. I feel like this has been like the nothing years or something. There's just lots of talk, lots of hype, lots of nothing happen.
Coincidentally, we are the ones who will swing the vote, whether we are willing to elect President Obama again or whether we decide to go in a new direction. As of now, we have at least 12 conservative men and women who have expressed interest in the ticket. And if you are undecided, you are exactly who they're coming after. Who will take up your cause? Who will fight for you? And who will you fight for in 2012? I'm Lauren Weathers, and this is Who's For You in 2012, a podcast series on the conservative hopefuls for the 2012 election. Unless you've been living under a rock, you can probably guess the most important issue to the millennial generation right now.
One of the things I'm really concerned about with the election is, our budget and our deficit in the country. We've got a huge deficit.
As of today, the deficit is $14.5 trillion.
The economic shift we've unfortunately seen the past couple of years, just what that means now that we have that.
I think that the number one way people are affected is by their pocketbook. I think it's the economy in general. And I think that the economy was such a big issue when Obama was elected and he had the stimulus package. The Democrats do it one way and the Republicans do it another. The Republicans, I guess the latest Republican that did it was George W. Bush with the trickle-down method and the corporate tax breaks and, more employment. And that works to me. When you start throwing up street signs where you don't need street signs and start repaving highways where they're not necessarily needed to do, or, remodeling government buildings or whatever, I think that that's more of like a industry-specific stimulus. And you're not really helping anybody. You're pretty much taking the money, you're running it through like endless bureaucracy, and then somehow spitting it back out into the system instead of just cutting it at the source and allowing for it to, trickle down, as George Bush would say. Taxes, when I say taxes are a big thing for me, I think it's more economy and taxes.
Now let's look at some specific hopefuls that people think can turn around this problem.
Michelle Bachmann is another person who could potentially be running in 2012, and she's got a lot of support from the Tea Party. She's a congresswoman from Minnesota, and she was actually the first woman congresswoman to be elected to the House of Representatives from Minnesota. And she is a leading advocate for tax reform, and she is a big advocate against wasteful government spending. And she actually hosted the first Tea Party caucus meeting because she saw the need for the Tea Partiers and to have a listening ear in Congress. And so that's how she's become the patriot for the Tea Party. And she also has the women behind her because even though she is a woman and she's new in her career, she doesn't take no for an answer, and she's very vocal and fights for what she believes. She sits on the Financial Services Committee and the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. And this just shows that she's really involved in our budget and our financial crisis and wants to help lower taxes and just keep our debt crisis from getting worse.
Michelle Bachmann, I like the idea of a woman candidate. I do. Recently, it's been the time for change.
She hasn't officially declared yet, but most people believe that she will. And if she runs, she'll most likely have all of the support of the Tea Party. She has 5 children, and she also has 23 foster children that she's taking care of, which has inspired her to become one of the Congress's leading advocates for foster and adopted children, which earns her bipartisan praise for these efforts.
And who has stepped up to challenge her but one of my personal favorites?
As of right now, I would like to support Tim Pawlenty, who's formerly been the governor of Minnesota. and during his 2 terms as governor of Minnesota, he helped to reform healthcare in his state and improve his schools without raising taxes. And because of his leadership, Minnesota now has nation-leading healthcare programs, the highest school test scores, and a leading economy. He was elected first to city council, where he later went on to serve in the House of Representatives, and then became the governor of Minnesota. He wanted to keep taxes low while improving education and healthcare while he was a governor, which makes me believe that he could do the same for our country, which is what we need now. We don't need higher taxes, but we need something to reform our healthcare system and something to reform our education system. He and his wife Mary are also very active in supporting the military, and in addition to traveling several times to war zones in Afghanistan and Iraq, he visits with commanders and troops there. He's also led efforts to create one of the nation's most comprehensive programs to support veterans, military members, and their families. So he's very dedicated to our armed services, and that's what we need in a president, somebody who looks out for the military members and their families.
In an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll taken the week of February 24th, it was said that Pawlenty would lose the election 50% to 31% to President Obama. However, 61% of those polled did not even recognize Pawlenty's name. Both Governor Pawlenty and Representative Bachmann have come under scrutiny for their extensive traveling during their terms. State Senator Terrell Clark was recently quoted saying, "She's off pursuing the celebrity status as opposed to actually doing the job. Could she more so be pursuing her run for the presidency?" Bachmann has also been criticized alongside the Tea Party for being an extremist. In a New Hampshire GOP 2012 straw poll taken in January 2011, Bachmann placed 5th with 5% of the vote, tying Jim DeMint, and following Mitt Romney with 35%, Ron Paul with 11%, fellow Minnesotan Tim Pawlenty by 8%, and Sarah Palin by 7%. What do you think of those numbers, and who do you want to see next week?
I heard Donald Trump might be running a candidate. I heard Mitt Romney, who's kind of one of my favorites. I really enjoyed him.
Donald Trump, of course, there's some hype about him because he's like a media whore. But is that allowed? I don't think anybody who has a TV show should ever be president, including Sarah Palin. There's other ways to get publicity. And quit your job and signing a contract with TLC is the best. Is it TLC or Discovery? I forget. Jeb Bush. I'd love to see another Bush in the presidency. I don't know why I'm such a big Bush fan, but I am.
So clearly there's some indecision, but we've skimmed the surface. I took a poll of 50 people, and 23 want to hear about potential libertarian candidates, and the rest pretty much want to hear about the GOP sweethearts, Romney and Gingrich. So do your research, and I'll see you next week on Who's For You in 2012.